5 years ago, La Masia finally produced an actual world-class talent again for the first time in years. 16-year-old Ansu Fati broke through in the first team and immediately became decisive. He played like he had been playing at Barça for 10 years. He had a certain aura to him, a spark of brilliance, he was confident. This kid was simply meant to become Barcelona's next world-class attacker. Then, in his second season, he got injured. And from there on, things would never be the same. Ever since his first injury, Ansu never managed to stay injury-free, and his confidence as a player slowly but surely disappeared as he saw his dreams of breaking through at Barcelona go up in smoke. Even on loan at Brighton last season, Ansu got plagued by injuries. And right now, the expectations for Ansu Fati are lower than they've ever been. Other big talents like Gavi and Lamine Yamal have taken the spotlight, and it seems unlikely that Ansu will ever reach his potential. Wait, hold on. Ansu Fati is still only 21 years old, and under a new manager he might have the chance to finally have a redemption season at Barcelona. Do you still believe in him? Cause I definitely do, and in this video I'll tell you exactly why. Okay, the first thing you are probably worried about when it comes to Ansu are his injury problems. I mean, what tells us that he can actually stay injury-free this season? Well, of course, you can never say for sure that someone is going to stay injury-free, but under Hansi Flick and his staff, the chances of Ansu getting injured are significantly lower. Ever since Flick arrived at Barcelona, he has been really cautious with Ansu in terms of his training, and he has been following a specific schedule to prevent him from getting injured again. That's simply the way Hansi Flick works. He always focuses on the tiniest details and he leaves no stones unturned. And that just happens to be the exact kind of manager that a player like Ansu Fati needed. And even though Ansu has been out injured for the first 2 months of the season, that specific injury that he had now is no actual reason for concern. It was only a minor injury to his foot. Nothing like the grave injuries he's had before to his hamstring and meniscus. So to anyone who is still worried about Ansu Fati's injury proneness, well, Ansu Fati has never been more likely not to get injured than he is now under Hansi Flick. However, being injury-free for a whole season is one thing, but being one of Barcelona's top players is a whole other thing. Cause if you remember the 22-23 season, Ansu Fati was actually largely injury-free for that whole season. I mean, he only picked up one minor injury that kept him out for about 6 days. Despite that, he wasn't able to leave his mark that season. After that season, most fans even considered his Barcelona career to be over. But here we are now. Hansi Flick actually believes in Ansu Fati and he wants to give him another chance. But what tells us that he can actually take it this time, contrary to 2 years ago? Well, Hansi Flick's football is slightly different from Xavi's football. One of the main differences is that Hansi Flick leaves more freedom for the players to do their own thing. Because under Xavi, everyone always had very specific tasks. That worked very well for some players. For Dembélé, for example, the role was always to stick wide, receive the ball, and then make an action from there. But not all players are at their best when having to be disciplined to a specific role. Look at Rafinha, for example. In most of his games under Xavi, he was a shadow of the player he was at Leeds and the player we recently saw against Valladolid. When playing at the right, he had a similar role to the one Ousmane Dembélé had. He needed to stay there, create the play from there, and try to take players on. That simply didn't get the best out of Rafinha. It is only when Xavi realized he had to get more out of him that he started deploying him at left wing in a role with way more freedom. It is only then that Rafinha started playing to his actual potential under Xavi. Think about the away game to PSG last season where Rafinha was the absolute man of the match and won the hearts of all Barcelona fans. Rafinha was the kind of player that needed freedom on the pitch. That is also why he's been so good under Hansi Flick thus far. Hansi Flick leaves a lot of freedom to the players in terms of where to be at what moments and how and when to make runs. So for Flick's system, you need players who can thrive when they have a lot of freedom. That means that they need to have the instinct and the footballing IQ to know where to be at what moments. Lamine Yamal has that, Dani Olmo has that, Rafinha has that, but of all players, Ansu Fati definitely has that as well. When Ansu first broke through, what people praised him for was how direct he was, how dynamic he was. He was always making runs in behind the defense. His link-up play with the other attackers has always been phenomenal too. I mean, Ansu Fati is everything that you're looking for in an attacker for Hansi Flick's system. This is really a case of the right player under the right manager. Ansu Fati is simply perfect for Hansi Flick's Barcelona. And I mean, if you compare Hansi Flick's Barcelona to his Bayern Munich team in 2020, I think you could compare Dani Olmo with Thomas Müller, Lamine Yamal with Kingsley Coman in terms of profile, Lewandowski with Lewandowski, and that fourth player is supposed to be a winger who is maybe not as much creative as Kingsley Coman or Lamine Yamal, but who is more dynamic, who makes more runs in behind the defense, and who has that spark of brilliance. At Bayern Munich, that player was usually Serge Gnabry. And at Barcelona, both Ansu Fati and Rafinha are just perfect for that role. Hansi Flick decided to keep Ansu at Barcelona for a very good reason. However, I already hear some people saying, well, Rafinha and Lamine Yamal are already in there, same with Dani Olmo and Fermin Lopez, so how is Ansu ever going to get a lot of minutes in this team? Yeah, I mean, that's the question that's been bothering me too. A lot of people probably think that Ansu will going to have the same kind of role as Ferran Torres and Pau Victor. He'll probably never start in big games when everyone is fit, but he'll get a decent amount of minutes from the bench. If you're a fan of Ansu Fati, you would probably be disappointed if he would never manage to become more than a second Ferran Torres. So, can he actually going to have a redemption season? And with redemption season, I mean scoring more than 15 goals in La Liga, and if you would ask Barcelona fans within 1 year to either sell Rafinha or Ansu Fati, they would sell Rafinha. That's what I mean with redemption season. Well, if you ask me, I do think that Ansu will have his best season yet. For one, he fits perfectly into Hansi Flick's Barcelona like we just said, but there's another reason too. Ansu Fati is extremely versatile. He can basically play in any position in attack. He might theoretically be at his best when coming from the left, but with the freedom he'll have under Hansi Flick, he'll probably just never stick to just one position in a game anyway. So it doesn't really matter at what position in attack you play him. He will always bring you a lot of movement and danger in front of goal. In Hansi Flick's Barcelona, there are 4 positions where Ansu Fati could technically play. There are the 2 wings, there's striker position, and he could probably also play as more of a second striker. Ideally, those 4 positions are filled in by Rafinha, Lamine Yamal, Dani Olmo and Lewandowski. Pau Victor, Ferran Torres and Ansu are the 3 players that you can use for rotation in that attack. Dani Olmo will probably be rotated for Fermin Lopez maybe. But if you compare Ansu Fati to Ferran Torres or to Pau Victor, then he should be able to get ahead of them in the pecking order if he can reach his old level again, which is perfectly possible if he has more freedom to roam in attack, like he will. That means that Ansu Fati could very soon become Hansi Flick's number 1 rotational player in attack. And if you think about it, either Lamine Yamal, Rafinha or Lewandowski will always be benched for the sake of getting enough rests. Eventually, that would mean that Ansu Fati would basically play game in, game out. If he can then take that opportunity with both hands, he might just become Hansi Flick's number 1 pick for the left wing or striker position. So in the best case scenario, Ansu Fati could become one of Hansi Flick's most undisputable starters by the time of January, for example. With the busy schedule and with Ansu's versatility, he will definitely at least get a chance to prove whether he can actually get there. Lastly, we have to talk about Ansu's mentality. I mean, this guy had all of the pressure in the world on him back when he first broke through. He wasn't part of a golden generation like Lamine Yamal. Nowadays, 5 new La Masia gems seem to be breaking through each year. Back in 2019, the only other La Masia player with lots of expectations on his shoulders was Riqui Puig. But Ansu was special. It had been ages since there had been such young kids to break through from La Masia. He was constantly being labeled as Barcelona's savior, which in all honesty he was in quite some games. Ever since his injury problem started though, he still had this weight on his shoulders of having to prove himself and show that he's Barcelona's next king. He just didn't have the chance to show it anymore. When he was fit, Barcelona were at their very worst and he literally had to come in and save them. The kind of pressure that this guy was under wasn't normal, not to mention the fact that he was playing with Messi's number 10. When he then didn't perform anymore like he used to, we can only imagine what kind of things must have been going through Ansu's head. Ansu Fati might only be 21 right now, but he has already experienced more pressure than most players do in their whole career, and arguably more than any La Masia youngster in the whole history of Barcelona. That pressure might have been part of the reason why Ansu didn't perform that well anymore in the 22-23 season. It is ever since Ansu Fati that Barcelona have also become more careful with their youngsters, which has probably helped the likes of Lamine Yamal play to their potential. Now, however, Ansu Fati is under no pressure at all. He just had a mediocre loan spell at Brighton. Fans literally don't expect anything anymore from him. Most of us thought he wouldn't even be at Barcelona anymore right now. Nowadays, we're looking at the likes of Lamine Yamal, Pau Cubarsí and Marc Brenal as well before his injury to save us. The bottom line is that Ansu Fati has nothing to lose this season. He can't really fail in any way. So that will only help him play with more freedom and confidence. And you know what's the best part of this? Ansu Fati heavily relies on confidence to play well. So right now we're in a situation where he has frankly nothing to lose, which will make him play with more confidence again, and God only knows in what kind of version of Ansu Fati that will result. I mean, just imagine Barcelona win La Liga with Ansu Fati as their top scorer. That would be the biggest plot twist in recent football history. But I would be all up for it to see that happen. God, please, bring Ansu Fati back, cause he deserves it. So, that was it for today's video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and also feel free to share your own opinion on Ansu Fati in the comments down below. Força Ansu Fati, of course, and have a good day.